Hi everyone, welcome to this week's Sunday Social. Well, I've got a full house today. This might be my fourth live stream, at least talking about the FXDs, but I haven't been on except for Patrick. I haven't been on a stream with everyone else to get their opinion. But also, we're going to talk a bit about, can watch companies surprise us anymore? Let us know your comments in the comment section as we go through this. But before we do that, let's do a wristwatch check. So, Pete, you're in the hot seat. You're up.
I am too. I am wearing my.
Ooh,
Nice.
Tag Monaco Steve McQueen. Why won't that focus?
I mean, we know what it is, even if it's blurred.
Anyway, there it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there we go.
Let's just get too close. So, yeah, a friend had bought that, and then he tends to cycle through watches, and I tend to live off his losses. So when he pays the flipper tax, and then he keeps an eye out if there's anything that's kind of interesting that I don't already have something like, he'll give me a call and say, am I interested? And one of the iconic chronographs of all time. It doesn't look like anything else in my collection. And that kind of matte blue dial with the traditional left-hand drive sort of case, I felt like it fit my style. So I got a very good deal on it, and my collection just got a little bit more interesting.
Good for you, Pete.
Yeah, and somebody's just feverishly typing in the comments, why didn't you say Monaco properly? I could feel it. I could feel like a sense.
Probably because I'm Australian.
So there you go. Whoever you are that was just typing that out, you've got your answer.
One could argue there is no way of saying any word properly.
That's true. That is
because it's Monte Carlo for a start.
Yeah, they're actually they're all variations of wrong.
Yeah,
it would have been extra special if it had also been a turquoise Monaco.
Yeah, turquoise. Yeah.
Yeah, they speak French, so I think you'll find that's what they say.
Just never believe Swiss pronunciation on anything.
So Pete, what year is that tag? Do you know?
2022, I think.
Oh, good. They released a
nice.
titanium one this week, didn't they, as well? There's a titanium one that came out.
That's really, really pretty. And I actually picked that up at a tag event where I saw the new Porsche glass box as well. So I got to see that in real life. And that is a stunning watch. And it's a proper size too. The other glass boxes are too small. It was funny. It's not just me. I was wearing one, and one of those women from Tag came across and said, "Oh, I didn't realize we made those in a 36." I said, "I don't. This is your main line." She said, "Oh, that looks too small on you." And then she went out the back and got the new Porsche one, which is a proper sized 40-something millimeter, and it's a way better proportion, just much better looking watch.
But if you like chronographs, I saw, at least in pictures, the new Glasutra original 60s chronograph with the grey dial. That's a stunner.
Yeah,
it's a shame it's only available for a limited period, because that's one I'd save for. It's absolutely amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah, the tag Night Driver that they've just released as well. The chronograph is properly good looking.
That one is cool.
Dave, you're up next. What are you wearing?
I'm wearing a watch that I found in my box from when I was a kid, which is a Seiko 240 pulse meter.
Oh, cool.
From 1989.
Very cool.
Yeah, so you just put your finger in the center, and then it tells you pulse.
Wee bit there. Let's see if
at the bottom.
Let's see if it decides to work.
Yeah, there was another. Was it Citizen that had one as well, or Casio had one? I remember somebody at school had one.
Yeah, it's you go to mode and pulse. There we go. Let's see if I'm alive or dead.
Drum roll.
It's reading. It's doing its thing. 59.
Oh, healthy.
Very relaxed.
Wow.
Yeah, because we associate heart rate with modern smartwatches, don't we? But they would have been around for a while.
Yeah, they have. I mean, it's a cool wee piece actually, and it needed a battery. pop the battery in. Bob's your uncle.
Awesome. And then Patrick's going to tell us why that reading your heart rate on a watch is not medically feasible.
No, it's fine. No, that's probably pretty good. But
Yeah.
It's actually, I've tested it because I've got a proper sleeve, a pressure sleeve and stuff, and it's actually, it's not that far.
Pulse absolutely accurate now. When they take an EKG from your wrist, that's not so good.
Less so. Yeah.
Patrick, you're up next. What are you wearing tonight?
Well, in honor of the recently passed new moon, I'm wearing my Crador full moon. And
Nice.
moon phase power reserve automatic with all the fun little exhibition stuff. I wish they made more watches like these, but to the topic of the day, we're not getting any surprising watches. So I decided to pull out an old-fashioned surpriser.
Awesome. No, it's really cool. It's quite a thick case as well.
Yeah, it's pretty decent. I mean, it forms well, but it was the first spring drive automatic, so I guess they didn't know how to pack spring drive plus an automatic rotor in there. They've probably gotten a little better at thinning it down, but yeah, it's omega thick.
Awesome. Mark, you're up next. What you wearing?
I have Christopher Ward C8 UTC.
Awesome.
Nice simple GMT. And since Patrick didn't do two watches, and in the spirit of our conversation, here's the surprise.
Yeah.
The surprise Belcanto.
Awesome.
We'll no doubt talk about this a bit later.
Absolutely. Todd, you're up next. What you wearing?
I've got the Seiko Presage Cocktail Time Negroni.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
this is a pretty watch. Immediately just had to get a different strap for it because Seiko straps. But yep, love this watch.
And more importantly, the showcase of the mustache. The first time
it's coming back. Fall is here.
Yeah, we got complaints when it got shaved off last time, so people can. I only wish I had my Magnum PI watch, but it's not coming till October.
We could track the progress.
Awesome, and then I'm next up. So I've got my my new Grand Seiko, the quartz one. I've got it on an Uncle Seiko. It's an annoying 19 millimeters lug width, but I put it on the old Uncle Seiko Tropic. Quite like it. And then I've also going to get a new review coming out soon for a Damascus steel watch, but more on that when I do the review. Okay, so today's subject is going to be, and it stemmed from Tudor's build up to the FXD, which I think most people that I spoke to thought it was perhaps a little over the top for what was released. Although I went on to do, Patrick and I did a live stream afterwards where when that Watches of Espionage channel released more of the actual background to it, I actually warmed to it a lot more. I'm like, wow, I wish they put that in the release. That was pretty cool. But Dave, if I go to you, because you were actually at the launch live, weren't you? So do you mind telling us a bit about it and maybe an idea of the people's reaction in real time when Tudor announced it?
I think the biggest surprise was that folk were expecting to be surprised. That's all I'm going to say. Yeah. This is Tudor we're talking about, and they are the masters of building up suspense. And to be fair, they have form for building up suspense and then going ta-da, and everyone goes, oh. Probably the last time they did anything that folk kind of went, okay, that wasn't what I was expecting, was when they dropped the PO1 on everybody. Yeah. And that probably gave every executive at Tudor enough of a fright to never do that again. So, I don't think anyone necessarily was expecting it. People keep hankering on for they're going to bring back the Submariner. They're never going to bring back the Submariner. It ain't ever going to happen for many reasons. But there was a lot of hype, in the room. The way they did it was they had a big, as you would expect, Rolex group, big pretty townhouse, lovely big room, some screens, some pictures, yada, yada, yada. And they come present it away. And they started off with this a US Navy video of a combination of Navy SEALs and frogmen and yada yada yada, built it all up, and then it was the kind of introduction of the FXD US Navy, and the kind of room was like, huh? Oh.
Yeah.
And then they pulled back the doors, and it lifted again because they had two of them sitting there, one on the NATO strap, one on the kind of Velcro strap. But they did have a US Navy issue original Tudor Prince Submariner there, which was, and it was outside of a case, so you could have a photo with it. That was quite interesting. So probably the most exciting thing of the entire launch from a point of view of seeing something different was something you definitely couldn't have. But it was, as to be fair, it was pretty much what I expected. Could I put my finger on a bit of paper and say I thought it was going to be another FXD? No, but it's a cool watch. And I guess for me, the sad thing is they build a lot of hype up for something which kind of lets people down, but it shouldn't, because it's already a good product they're launching, because the FXD in itself is a pretty cool product. And when they launched the blue one for the Marine Nationale, it's a great watch. But a lot of folk do like a kind of black watch, and it's a more traditional watch. It's got a unidirectional bezel, or as their website said for a long time, undirectional, which was a bit of a mistypo on their website. But I'm sure it'll sell well, and it's a cool looking watch. The backstory is not convinced. There's a bit of marketing spiel thrown into that one for the sake of it. At least with the Royal Navy, they have issued watches. At least for the Marine Nationale, they very much had a relationship there. Someone asked the question, which was interesting: how come no caseback engravings, etc., etc.? Well, kind of because we've never done casebacks markings for the US Navy. Like, they've bought watches and they've marked them themselves, but we've never done any. So it is what it is. But yeah, it's a cool watch. It was exactly what you expected a Tudor launch to be like.
Was this in Geneva, Dave?
Yeah, somebody's asking.
They did a couple of launches simultaneously. They did a European one, they did an Asian one, and they did a United States one. So there was a couple around the world that they kind of did at the same time.
Yeah, somebody's asking whether you went to the Florida one, so Brassic Time saying, did they fly watch journers out to Florida for the black dial?
They did one event in Florida where some folk went to. They did Europe and they did Asia. It just depended where you ended up, to be honest.
I think there was a tone in Barasic's email or comment where it was actually more like, did they fly people to Florida for a black dial?
Yes, is the answer to that question.
Yeah.
And that's not anything unusual either. There's in the same way as did Omega have a massive party in Saint-Tropez for a lot of journalists for 3 or 4 days with a lot of alcohol and food involved for a whole load of watches with blue dials? Yes, they did. That's just the nature of the relationship that they have with that the brands have with the press. It's the symbiotic relationship, and that's kind of how it works. Love it or loathe it.
Yeah, because I think because when they launched it, I thought, wow, they seem to be conflating the history of the Tudor Submariner with the FXD. And then the Watches of Espionage article was fascinating because it went into the fact that, hey, they've actually been testing this black dial FXD, and it had input from the current serving US Navy SEALs as Squadron of SEAL Team 6. And I wonder why they didn't go down that avenue with it, because that's a more exciting or more topical and more interesting background to that watch, because apparently the way the bezel works and things like that was feedback from current serving members of the
I think I'm on Dave's team with this one, because he was saying that he kind of thinks the fudged up story is a little fudgy, and I completely think that story is fudgy.
There is absolutely no way that in a modern world...
They're saying that there's a relationship, but I don't really believe there's a relationship. I mean, they might have just handed it to a dude and said, hey, hold this, please. But, it's not a real service watch.
No,
and
there is a relationship.
Most of that story is fudge.
I'll guarantee there is a relationship, but they've been, from what I understand, they've been making sort of unit versions. So this is a trophy, not a tool. So these
well, you could argue that, Pete. What this is not a US Navy service issue watch. This is, in the same way as Air Force squadrons, Navy SEAL squadrons,
right.
Whoever in the military, they gang up together, clubby some money together, approach a brand and say, hey, would you guys make X for us? And if there's enough of them or there's a high enough profile, they might say, any chance you can make it in black? Or can you tweak this or can you tweak that? And they buy them. And then suddenly the brand has an in where there is a relationship. But, unlike the Marine Nationale, which is an official military branch of the French military, they can say, we have a relationship there, because they do. And the Marine Nationale buy product for service issue. The US Navy do not. So that's why they kind of have to be very careful what to say about US Navy.
Yeah. I think the US military as well is very protective of what logos for certain, because I know a couple of people asked about Jason at Watch Rolling, who joined us on the live stream many times. He made a really good video about why there shouldn't be seal insignia on there and why there isn't. And he actually made a really good point. I'll link to his video down below. And I know the US military, TJ talks about it as well, where they can't be seen to be necessarily promoting a product. So yeah, it's interesting. But so does anybody want any other questions on this particular subject? Because it kind of spurned the topic for today, which we can move to. I don't know whether we've done the FXD to death, or is there anything?
I suppose kind of to add. Oh, go ahead, Pete.
I was going to say we're in a weird bind with, and brands like Tudor, I think, are the best example. Tudor and Rolex are the best example of the problem we've kind of created for ourselves. We've told brands that we want you to have a solid brand look. We want you to be consistent. We want you to hold models over an extended period of time. We keep talking about, the most valuable things to us are versatility and timelessness. All of those are a recipe for never surprising us. And Tudor has sort of created this map where they've said everything kind of fits within this, and then all we do is infill. We look at the matrix and look at gaps, and we go, oh, there's a gap there for a blue dial. Oh, there's a gap there for a silver case. But it must fit within a pre-existing matrix, and that's why nothing can surprise us, particularly from a brand like Tudor, which has kind of laid out everything. It's sort of got a network that extra things that dropped into, as opposed to it's got a central idea but then spears off in all sorts of different directions. So I think Tudor is structured to be an insanely boring watch company, but that's what people want. They sell their number 15 on the market because there's around about 4% of people in the world that is all they ever want.
Yeah, wasn't it a few years ago that there was the argument that, hey, Tudor is Rolex's experiment?
Well,
not really.
I think that's pivoted now. I think Dave and I both are on the park that Tudor will be what Rolex was. Rolex is trying to go up market, and Tudor is going to fill that slot. A lot of people, especially Rolex fanboys, hate that discussion because they get all hot and bothered that Tudor will never be Rolex. But the fact is, that is exactly what the plan is, I think, in my opinion, that they're trying to. Tudor will be Rolex. Rolex is going to compete in another realm. A
2023 Tudor would blow a year 2000s Rolex out of the water in terms of watch tech, finishing, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I agree.
100%.
And two things is that one is that a brand like Tudor, they're not going to do something way out in left field because they just want to make money, and this watch will sell. They'll put it out and it will sell, and there'll be a lurch for them, and you'll be hard to get them at first, and then they'll be available in the boutiques. But they're not going to do something that's not going to sell, or that there's a potential for it to not sell.
They tried that, and everyone loves. Well, one, they tried it for years. It failed so miserably that they withdrew from the market and reset. And then when they came back to the market, they gave us options. They said, you can be interesting and avant-garde and unusual. Here's the North flag. Or you can be pretty straight down the line, neoclassical, based on mid-century watches, and people voted with their wallet. Everyone said they loved the North flag. No
very
one bought
clearly.
it.
Correct.
Well, Yeah, they initially, when they came back as well, they had a bit of freedom to play around to find where their place was. So, you had North Flag, you had the Advisor, which was a cool little alarm watch, you had the Black Bays, you had the PO1, you had
The
lots of
Fast
things
Rider.
floating about. Fast, yeah,
Yep.
exactly. You had lots of things, and then suddenly it went dink, 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 and it came down, and they honed in on what sold. And they've now got themselves into a really good commercial stride, and they're going to stick to it.
Yeah.
And Sam, you brought it up in your little the shorter video where you were talking about it with the side-by-side pictures. Everybody's been begging for that Tudor Submariner. Tudor said, "Here's your Tudor Submariner. It looks a lot like it. The markers, everything's there. Here's your Tudor Submariner, and that's what you're going to get for the future." They satisfied the market. It just doesn't have the title, Once people get over that,
it never will have.
Yeah, isn't it funny that people would have been that what people expected from that launch was actually not a new watch. It was a reissue of a previous Tudor watch. I don't hear anybody saying. Everybody was like, "Oh, it's going to be the big block chrono. It's going to be the Tudor Submariner. It's going to be the North Flag." Nobody expected Tudor to do like a new watch. I mean, granted, it led to, they said heritage, didn't they? They said going back to our heritage. So that kind of was like put people down that. But I thought that was interesting as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've got one comment to defend Tudor a little bit because I think the world is being very harsh. And
I agree.
We're talking about Tudor being boring, and they're the only ones in the Rolex family that innovates anything. And I mean, the Rolex family is the most boring line of watches ever. They do nothing but color changes, and they haven't in 30 years. And, as I said, I think that's just something we're taking for granted. They're not throwing in carbon. They're not throwing in, ceramic, bronze, silver. I mean, they're at least doing something.
Patrick, please, Rolex have at least now discovered titanium.
That's true. And one other thing, which I think we're going to find is, before watches didn't sell. We're coming out of a hype market where all of a sudden everything was selling just because people think if they buy 3 watches, they're going to get sold a Rolex. I walked into the AD the other day. They had the green Seamaster, the Seaweed Master. They had every Tudor in the entire range. Like, all of these watches are going to sit again. So before, the Advisor didn't sell, the North Flag didn't sell, no Tudors sold. And we're going to get right back to no Tudors selling right now because the watch market is in a flop. And, it's just going to go back to the way it was. And I don't think necessarily the Black Bay was that great. It was just people wanted to buy every watch in the cabinet. And they thought, buy a Cartier, which, sat in cabinets for decades. But now, those are selling. It's just the flipper market. And now that the flipper market is at least getting a nail in the tire, I think, all the watches are going to become a little less desirable.
Yeah, it's an interesting point as well. I think, it's an interesting point, isn't it? There was a Tudor event in Orlando last night, or Justin, who's a friend of the show, he was doing an event. So I didn't get to go down and actually view one of these FXDs in person. I changed my view on it. I thought, I don't like it. But then actually, I think I do quite like the look of it. I wish it had the date on it. And I know Jason at Watch Rolling is like, it should be a simple watch. But other military watches have the date on it, like the CWC or the Elliot Brown and all of that type of watches. It's a separate topic. But I guess I'll throw the question out to the panel then is, so Tudor released the Ranger, they really built that up, and that kind of was like, and then they released this and it had a big build up, and then it kind of, do you think if they did bring back like the North Flag or something like that, do you think they've cried wolf one too many times with the overt way that they're launching these watches, or do you think it's quite exciting and whatever it comes to?
I didn't even stay up for it. I didn't pay attention to it. I thought to myself, this is going to be a dial change of something. I think Tudor have, for me personally, and I'm a bad example because I'm not a Tudor fanboy. For me, Tudor have well and truly shot their bolt. I don't care anymore. Everything is a version of something they already make, and they will tease me. They're the polar opposite in one way of a brand. One of the brands I do like, in that they will tease and hype and build up something which is really not worth even a press release. Whereas, as I said, the other brand I like, Breitling, will just say, we'll just have watches appear. No press release, no nothing. Classic. If you know, you know. If you don't know that there's that champagne dial premiere, you're not buying it, and it's your job to find out about it. I love that in a watch company.
Yeah, it's
conversely, I love Tudor as a brand, but I only expect incremental changes. I don't expect something wild. I expect consistent, good, high quality product to come out. It's kind of like Apple with their iPhones. The iPhone hasn't changed much for the last 10 years. It's been incremental changes. Yeah, but this latest iPhone, I'm like, love it. This is what I wanted. I wanted that USB-C. I wanted, it's these little. I get it. It's just small, and people want to dump on it, but it's like, I know it's a good product, and if they've improved it a little, I love it. So that's I'm at a different place.
And much like Rolex, they've found titanium.
Yeah.
Well, can I just set the record straight on? Can I set the record straight, because I'm sure it's a proprietary alloy that shares some resemblance to titanium, but is a Rolex specific metal.
So they've basically added 1/100th of 1% of something.
Yes.
Todd, that's a great example, and the reason that example is so great is because it's exactly what the watch companies are doing, and they did it in a great way. Because I woke up at 8 o'clock in the morning because I wanted to buy that new phone because mine's 4 years old, and this is the last year that you get the best money back for it. And the great thing is they did little tiny incremental changes, like a new processor, the new port, but they didn't even up the price. And that's pretty actually great. And I know all the people out there are like mad that the iPhone isn't some like magic new thing, but we're spoiled rotten. I mean, I don't expect every new car, every new year to look like a different car. Watches are the same way. Like the Submariner isn't supposed to change every year. Neither is, the Black Bay. Like, they're what they are. What Dave said earlier is what I completely agree with, though. Make something new. So if you're going to, do this hype fairy thing where you're pretty much telling us how magic it is, don't just give us a new color. Do a bel canto. And, if you do that, the world will be your oyster. But until they do that, they're going to fall a little short.
Yeah, I think anybody who lived through the 80s and 90s when computers were coming out, I mean, we were spoiled then, weren't we? Because especially in the 90s, like I was selling Apple Macs at the time, and the next Mac that came out was exponentially better than the previous version. It was like, oh, you can write onto a CD in this one. Yes, you can't just read a CD, you can write onto it. And then the first iMac that came out, and people were like, what is this thing from like a spaceship that's landed? So we got spoiled for sure in the 90s.
I think one of the other issues too, though, is a lot of watches, a lot of companies in general are in a kind of defensive mode, and have been for a little while, in that they've established their market. Tudor has found their Todds and their Patricks, and the people who want what they want. And Tudor is more than happy if Todd and Patrick buy all the next, releases. Sam picks up one every now and then. Mark, Pete, and Dave are never interested in buying a Tudor. That's okay. They don't need to sell to us. They're perfectly happy taking Todd and Patrick's money. I think,
for the record, Dave has more Tudors than I have.
but I think a lot of brands they're comfortable with where they are, and they're not in growth mode, and they just keep churning stuff out.
But also, if you're Tudor, they're at a position at the moment where they've got the prize racehorse. They've got Shergar. They know it won't last forever, but they know they've got a horse that every time they take it out the stable, put a saddle on it, stick it in the gates, there's a high probability it'll be a winner and it'll bring home the bacon. And that's exactly what they're doing. And you will keep riding that prize-winning horse till it is ready to go to the glue factory. And that is quite literally what they will do. And they have no need to bring out something absolutely revolutionary because they've proved themselves. They don't actually have that much to prove as a company. They're there to make money.
Oh, absolutely. And they're making good money selling to the people that have already decided they want to buy a Black Bay. But I suppose my question would be, and it's a little bit like Apple. Apple's like penetration had stabilized about 7 or 8 years ago, and it just quietly goes down a little bit every year because everyone in the world who's ever going to buy an Apple has already bought it, and now they're just upgrading. I would argue everyone who's ever going to buy a Black Bay has made that decision. All they're doing now is selling to people that have already decided they like a Black Bay.
And if you honestly think that these brands are catering or even thinking about idiots like us and everyone else in the comments who owns more than one watch, then you're sadly mistaken. They're interested in the guy or the girl or the whoever who's thinking, I've got my first job, I'm a graduate, or I've just had a promotion and I want to buy a nice watch to remember that. And it's probably one of the only watches they might ever buy. And they'll buy a Black Bay. And to them, it's all new, it's all shiny, it's all fancy. They don't have anything else. They're not sitting going, will I buy the red one to go with the 52 other colours that I have? They're just, that's not the market that is the real market for these people. We think that we have this great influence. We're the ones that moan, and they're the ones that are broadly the most irrelevant to the majority of the brands.
And there are far more normal people than there are.
There's billions of them.
However much we like to think the watch community is growing, its influence is not what we think on the major brands, and there are so many more normal people, like Dave said.
I think
huge amount of
absolutely agree with that. But I think we should also, and I think it was back, I'm 90% sure this was research George Kern did back when he was in IWC. And their numbers were saying that the average number, it was something like, if a person owns one watch worth, I think back then it was $7,000 US, they probably own 7 watches worth $7,000 US. So there's a price point at which that logic changes, where the person buying, and it probably exists somewhere between Tudor and Rolex, where for Tudor, it's predominantly and almost exclusively people coming in, buying that one watch, walking out, and never darkening the door of an AD again. But somewhere above that, and I don't think it's a long way above that, the people like us that come in and are constantly buying more and are constantly bugging them and putting up photos and talking about our collection, we start to become more important.
I wonder if there's not a top and a bottom price. You see people who have 50 Seikos, and then you have people who have multiple Seamasters, just to pick an example. But this may not be the case for everyone, but you can argue that the disposable income Seiko, the $150, $200 watch, if you have one, you might have 5. But then, as Pete says, there's a gap until you get to $5,000, $6,000, whatever that point is.
Maybe that's why the Blanc swatch really annoys people, because it's supposed to live in that they're $150 and you can buy them all, but it doesn't. It threatens to go into the, in Australia, I think they're about $700 or $800, which is just not supposed to be where affordable collectibles are.
Yeah, well, this is another good point, isn't it, Pete? Because this was another one that I should have put it in we were going to put it in thumbnail, but I was toying with it. The Swatch Blancpain is another example of this, where nobody that knew about watches was surprised, really, were they, that was the next one.
No, I think I think there were people that were surprised. I remember, and again, people have selective memories. If you go back about a year ago, I did a video saying this is absolutely positively going to happen. And every single person said I was clearly wrong, that there was no reason. Now they've come back and said utterly unsurprising. But a year and a half ago, the idea that Swatch would do their next one would be a Blancpain was absolutely ridiculed. I should find that video and go back through the comments, and just person after person saying they will never allow this to happen. This will never be allowed to occur again. It's never going to be popular. It's all going to be over in a week. There's famous last words.
Yeah, but I mean, but back to your point, I bet you if you look at the dislike-like ratio on that video, I think overwhelmingly people will like it. I think people, to our point about Tudor, there's a vocal minority, isn't there, sometimes on these things?
Oh, and that's absolutely the case. One thing I have found is there's two types. So there's the world's people that buy watches, of which we are a few percentage points at best. And then within that community, it splits to about 90% of people that hold reasonably normal views, but never say anything on Facebook or on social media. And there's about 10% of people who hold absolutely rabid views and are constantly posting. And that leads to real distortions over what, even within the watch community, what we think. I find routinely like-dislike ratios, just something that requires just a simple click, people will be overwhelmingly liked, but all the comments might be insanely negative because people have to be that excited by something negative to be bothered typing.
Yeah, it's the same with that Grand Seiko video I did. If you look at the comments, it looks like everybody is accusing me of everything under the sun, of not trying it on and everything. But the like ratio has never dipped. The dislike ratio has never skewed it to be less than 90% liked. So it's funny, like how you do it on that.
Somebody like me who only comments to help the algorithm and support Sam and Pete, isn't that helpful?
No, you're helpful. You're just, in
helpful.
fact, it's great.
Engagement. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all engagement. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's the engagement, yeah.
And it's always nice to have an occasional voice of sanity.
Oh, then don't read my comments, please.
It's funny. We have a thing at work where, because we're all a lot of us are remote, we use a messaging system called Slack, and there's an app that you can load into it that randomly selects two people in the company and forces you to have a half an hour meeting. It's called Donut Buddies. So like randomly it'll pop. Hey, no, it works really well because I'll meet like it because we're a lot of developers at our place, and the stereotype is that developers are introverted. They wanted to get them to meet other people. So you'll do half an hour and you usually talk about yourself. And I'll normally talk about, obviously, the watch channel and what we do here. And there's a couple of people who be like, you know what? I'm not into this at all, but I love doing these donut buddies to hear about people's hobbies and how passionate they are about them. The fact that you're just to hear like a whole separate something that I would never know about and know that somebody is passionate about these little niches is interesting to people, I think.
Can I have an answer to Hans' question about do we ever get bored of watch reviews?
Oh, that's interesting. New
releases. I write a fair few for the Scottish Watches Instagram and for the watch articles, and yes, I do get really bored once in a while, and I try hard not to let it show, but sometimes I get edited much more heavily than others because I've let my disdain show. So, if I'm having to write an article on my 50th Seiko review that week, yeah, I'm pretty bored of it. But sometimes you then get the real special, make me happy surprises, like the Miffy the rabbit watch that came out early last year that just made me laugh and made me happy I was in a position to actually write the reviews. but there are days when you just go, oh God, not again.
I find all watch reviews boring to do. That's why I don't do them. Unless a watch is doing something, unless there's something sort of larger that's interesting, like the Swatch, the Swatch collabs are fascinating to me. They say all sorts of really interesting things about the industry and consumers and where we're going and where the hobby's going, and that's interesting. But in general, I don't like any watch reviews. I don't like making them. I don't read them. Yeah. If I see one more, person doing a spec sheet is reading me a spec sheet, I'm going to throw my laptop out the window.
Do you not think that's important? I mean, because I do a lot of that, because I think people who are interested in buying the watch also, because there's a lot of stuff that's not said, isn't there, in the specs of a watch?
Yeah, but on the other hand, look, there are company websites. If I'm going to buy the watch, if I want to know what movement it is and what size it is, I'll just go to the company. I don't need your specs.
I really do enjoy hearing other people's real world experiences with the watch, as opposed to
I don't need facts about the watch. The facts are already there. I need someone to take those facts and synthesize them into some sort of argument, some kind of opinion. If you're like, I'm paying for your opinion. I'm not paying for you to read me a spec sheet.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and Jody is an example because he does the spec sheet thing. But he reviewed a watch I actually bought, and his review was part of the decision because he showed that the clasp was micro release or was micro adjust. And there's nothing about that in the spec sheet. There's nothing about that in the images. And there he is sliding the clasp in and out going, okay, now you may have tipped my decision. I mean, I was leaning that way anyway, but I like micro adjust. And sometimes you pick up a detail, but for the most part, when somebody has a watch, I've probably already looked up the spec sheet if I'm interested in it anyway.
Yeah, I'll play devil's advocate a little bit and say I'm the same way about spec sheets. I don't care. I don't want you to tell me how thick it is. I don't want you to tell me the lug to lug, but I do want to see it on your wrist. I just want a non-rendered picture where I can see it in real sunlight and I can see angles. And so that's what I watch reviews for, to pretty much just see the real deal versus what Tudor wants me to see. And sometimes you might find something out, and hopefully they do have an opinion, because that's my thing. I just hate wish-washy, like I love it all. And there's so many good channels that have become not so good channels because they lost their true opinion and now they just suck up to the brands, and you can tell.
Well, maybe we can pivot then to perhaps another subject. Is Federico just made a video on what he's calling the demise of Hodinkee, but he actually said that specific point, Patrick, that he stopped reading Hodinkee because everything was advertorial since they started selling watches.
Which it broadly is. But Hodinkee as a business had a pretty clear lineage from where they were to where they wanted to be. It started off pretty innocently, bit of a watch blog, bit of a site for watch lovers, and it suddenly caught fire. It got global attention, and they thought, we can make some real money here. And they have made some real money. Usually, the two don't go hand in hand. You can't maintain complete impartiality and just be blunt with what you want to say, because the watch industry is pretty small, and the minute you start pissing them off, it's game over when it comes to content. And if you want to be a retailer, it's definitely game over. That's just the reality of it. And
I think you're completely right.
The end game's coming for them from a point of view of the way they operate as a retailer was allowed to be because of how popular they were as a non-aligned media outlet, if you want to call them that, which with certain brands like Omega, for example, they're one of the few retailers who get to cherry pick just the models that they want to range and only buy them and not have to buy into the whole shoot and match. They don't need to worry about brand alignments. If you're a retailer, what other brands have you got? I don't like that brand. You can't have us because you've got them. Yada, yada, yada. They've got brands that do not go hand in hand in any other retail form. But as that grows, they've lost that. As they've lost that, the advantage to give them that then disappears. It's a very different world for them. And I think within a few years, it'll either just cease to be, or it will go off to be something completely different to what it is now.
Yeah, because it's interesting. This whole YouTube space as well, because I live near Disney and I watch a lot of YouTube stuff, and there's Disney bloggers that are on the approved list by Disney, and so they have to tie the company. Like same with anything, the car reviewers really suffer from this as well, don't they? They can't really. A lot of them can't be really. They don't get access to the new cars if they're really. And the problem is that those aren't the big channels, the big Disney channels. But having said that, they're not. They're making money from the ads rate. They're not. It's not a. They're not also making money from watches as well. So it's I think that's across the genre of all YouTubers, isn't it? Like, can you be totally?
It's not just YouTube. This has been going on. This has been going on since the second magazine took ads.
Yeah. Although it's in a little bit of partial defense of the watch media space as well. Everything that just said is absolutely true, by the way. I'd add something to that, which is a huge proportion of the watch media landscape is also not professional journalists trying to produce a magazine. It is, in fact, just enthusiasts that like watches and started writing about it, or did a YouTube channel and then someone started watching it. And so they're not walking, excuse me. So they're not walking into this with a mindset of, I have to have some editorial independence. I have to have some, and this is something I raised with the Worn and Wound guys on a Q&A, and they kind of sidestepped it, which is, my question to them was, you are constantly complaining about the fact that there's hype watches and that there's, the whole media just focuses on one watch, but you ignore the fact you are the media, and Worn and Wound is a reasonably big avenue. Do you ever sit down and tally up, like, what are the brands out there? How much coverage are we giving them? Are we part of the problem? Are we, feeding these fires? They just don't. It doesn't even occur to them that they should be keeping a running tally. There was one watch company, I counted their articles, and they'd done 90 in the last 5 years, 94 articles on Tudor and 4 articles on Breitling. And I wrote to them and said, did someone from Breitling run over your cat? And they came back and said, we'd never actually even stopped to think about it. We'd never even looked at the numbers.
Yeah, Hodinkee with Brew watches, like Brew. You think that Hodinkee was the media arm of Brew watches. The amount of articles they do, that comparison they do. Oh, comparing the Brew watch. Oh, what are you comparing it against? Oh, just like the other colored Brew watch that was released.
I wonder if the only person who might have made that comparison, Pete, is Ariel Adams, and then he looked at the results and said, "I'm going to hide that," because he's that kind of data-driven intellectual,
yes,
that would do that for his own interest, but for the interests of his company, I don't think he wants it public. Purely speculation, but there aren't many people, I think, who would actually be, just as whoever you contacted said, we've never thought about it.
Yeah, I mean, to all your defenses and pros and all, I mean, the idea is you just got to know your sources. I mean, I'm sure Teddy Balbasar is a really nice guy, maybe, but I can't stand listening to his show because I know everything he talks about is what he sells on his website. And, because I know that, I just don't listen. Same thing as I don't get my news from CNN or Fox, because guess what? I know which way they're pointed. So, if you're going to someone who's already has an agenda, it just makes sense. And, the Worn and Wound thing's funny because I love the Worn and Wound guys. I think they're just kind of fun, and I met them in New York, but their last little episode they just made, they were talking about independent watches or micro brands, and they brought out a table of all of the micro brands that were collab with Worn and Wound, And instead of having 6 different versions, like each one of them brought a Ferrier and each one brought a this. And I'm like, you didn't even bring out 6 brands because you brought out your commercial pieces with them. And like, I watched that video and I just go, does anyone else see this? Like, does everyone else just go, that's great?
Well, maybe they don't. Going back to our Tudor point about how the general public aren't actually, it's all the enthusiasts. I think of this about Teddy Baldassar because he's edging ever closer to 1 million subs. He's one of the big YouTubers that enthusiasts don't talk about. But for the general, I mean, he just did one today. What is Loom? And it's got nearly 40,000 views. I mean, and he's done stuff like what is a watch? Like what watch you should wear if you are going to college. And his bread and butter is
it's I stopped watching Teddy because not so much because of the commercial side, but really because it's just beginner content. It's all Watch 101, just repeated over and over again. And so it's kind of, there's no point watching Teddy. I'm not gonna watch a single Teddy Baldassar video and learn something I haven't already learned, think something I hadn't already thought. So what's the point?
And Mark from Long Island Watches did a lot of those introductory videos better a long time ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And you actually bring up a good point when you bring up Brew, and I'm thinking about Brew, and there's no hate here, but just as an example, Brew and Studio Underdog, they're both kind of one-trick ponies, and the only thing that comes out is a different colorway or a different style of the same kind of thing, but nobody gives them any shade. It's not the same blast as Tudor, but everybody gets excited, and that's those are both enthusiast brands.
Yeah, I mean, particularly Studio Underdogs. It's the same watch.
Yeah,
Underdog in the name, isn't it?
I think you got to give them a bit of time.
Okay.
So all I'm going to say is you might live to regret saying one trick pony with one of those brands in the very near future, but we'll leave that.
Okay. Well, that'll be exciting.
I agree in principle. A couple of points. I think, Patrick, you said, about the media having an agenda. All media's got an agenda. Even the ones who proclaim to be independent have an agenda. The agenda usually being to prove that they are independent. That's their agenda.
Yeah.
And that doesn't always necessarily lead to truly good journalism, because quite often their way to get followers or to people to consume their content is to be inflammatory, or they'll say the things that they feel they couldn't say if they wanted to toe the line. So there's very few out there, no matter what side of the camp they're on, are genuinely just trying to deliver content straight from them.
Nobody wants that, I don't think. I don't know whether the viewers want that.
And if you're getting review pieces from the brands, it's hard to believe that you're truly independent. If every watch you reviewed you bought, then you're
these relationships are that there's a symbiotic relationship there. Some of it is incestuous.
More symbiotic than others, yeah.
Exactly, but that's like everything in life, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not slating anyone one way or the other. Sorry for interrupting, Dave. This is the way the world is, and always has been.
Yeah, in a perfect world, what we need is a company which is a watch media outlet which is large enough that they can, with external revenue, sales, subscriptions, whatever it is, they can fearlessly and with no preference just buy watches, review them, and sell them on. But
impossible.
even the example you were raising, Mark, about people reviewing their own watches. Well, that watch has already been through so many filters of bias in your choice to buy it, that by the time you get around to reviewing it, there's no way you're independent.
I think it was 10 and 2, and they may not have been in the first one, but they're the first one I encountered, where they just came out and said, "Yeah, we're not going to review watches we don't like. We're only going to review watches we want to buy," and that's perfectly fine. They're honest about it.
Lots of people do that.
Yeah, I bought it. You're definitely not going to talk crap about it.
Yeah. I mean, but having said that, I mean, I review every Christopher Ward watch that's offered to me, and I don't like them all. The reviews are on there where there's certain ones that I've said I do not, I wouldn't personally buy this one because it's a weird yin and yang, isn't it? Because some things that I don't like about a watch, other people will really like. So it's a fine line. I mean, my bias obviously is that I review watches. So.
I think even if you never published it, what I recommend, because I've kind of done this myself, is you learn so much more from reviewing watches you don't like, particularly famous watches that you don't like. Because if you review a watch you like, you tend to, you see the thing you like, you say you like it, you move on. I really like this color blue. Isn't it nice? Move on to something else. But if you don't like something, you kind of have to explain why. And then you've got to dive into why. And then you've got to think, well, hang on, I've seen other watches do this and I didn't dislike it there. So now you've got another why to dive into. So reviewing a watch you don't like and having to justify, why don't I like that handset? Why don't I like the way that case curves? Why does this not work? Teaches you 1,000 times more about watches than just looking at stuff you like.
It's much harder to do, but it's a very good exercise. I agree.
Yeah, Brandrew's got a great comment here. Therein lies the issue. Get sent a watch, you're biased. Buy a watch, you're just trying to cope. So you've got that sunk cost fallacy. But if you bought all the watches yourself, you've got that sunk cost fallacy, haven't you? Like, oh, I spent my money on this. I'm biased towards making it look like that. You know, my Grand Seiko video, I was like, I messed up. I mean, I got like many comments about, oh, you really messed up there, didn't you? So there's like I don't think you could buy everything, could you? Because you've still got that sunk cost fallacy.
And even then, there's another problem here, which is, how do you review a watch? Do you review a watch for everyone, or do you review a watch for the people that are likely to buy it? So if Tudor, God forbid, ever produce a watch I genuinely want, I strongly suspect that their current fans are going to absolutely hate it and are going to be disappointed with the new direction that Tudor's taken. So
I've had just that conversation with Mike France on multiple occasions. The last couple of years of Christopher Ward, they've gone back into vintage, more homage, bel canto aside. But I said to him, Mike, you know, you're not making a watch for me, because if you make a watch for me, I'll buy it. Then you're out of business. I know my tastes aren't mainstream most of the time, so you have to run the business to get the sales and meet your targets.
Yeah, and so one of the things is one guy runs a Substack where he does watch reviews, and the first part of every watch review, this is something I've stolen if I'm going to get back into doing watch reviews myself. The first part of every watch review is, this is who this watch is for. This is the person that the watch company is aiming at. I am going to review this watch through that lens, and that's all.
And I think it's only a blog to watch that do anything like that, but they do it right at the end in a tiny little comment.
Yeah, this guy does it the other way around. He says, this is the watch that the designer was thinking of. This is what he's trying to achieve. Let's assess the watch against what he was trying to achieve, not against some sort of universal standard that could apply to everything from an Orient to a Rolex.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Well, I'm going to defend the watch reviewing media for a quick second, because I guess the only part I have is, I understand bias a lot. I mean, I'm a scientist, but it's like, the idea is, I think you can look at it in a non-biased way. I mean, I don't get very many watches sent in for review because, hey, I'm a small channel and I've got enough of my own watches and pocket watches and silly things. But, when the rare brand sends me something, as long as it's no skin off my back, sure, I'll review it. Why not? But I'm 100% going in just telling you what I think of the watch. I don't have a bias. I mean, Siga sent me that one watch, and it was like the Z series. And, when I first saw it, the picture, I'm like, Richard Mille. And I was like, oh, it's going to be big. Oh, it's going to be cheap feeling. And, I probably had more negative biases than positive ones. When I got the watch, I'm like, I mean, for $400, it's better than a Blancpain Swatch. And like, is it a great watch? Hell no. It's not even 30 meters water resistance. So, I mean, to me, why make a watch that artistic if I can't even wash my hands with it? I mean, to me, that's just stupid. And I said that in my video. I'm like, this is a bonehead idea. I've got pocket watches that are more water resistant than this new modern watch. And the rotor makes a hell of a lot of noise, which means all those 7750 ETA people are going to go batshit cuckoo because they hate that rotor sound. It's a nice watch, but you can tell it's somewhat poorly made. And that's an honest review, giving my negative and positive biases, and maybe that equals out. I just don't like the people who don't want to ruin a relationship. I don't care. I mean, if Siga never sends me another watch, I don't care.
I don't care
so
either.
I'm just going to review it based on what they sent me. I have a job. I don't need them to pay me. I'm just doing it because this is my passion. If I could get money and do well in this, great. I'd probably have more hair, and I would probably have better cholesterol numbers. But...
Yeah, can I just react? So Pete says the irony of uncritical reviews from sellers is salesmen build their careers on repeat customers, and essential in that being so. So I worked in retail sales. The key isn't like being trusted because you are being trusted because you're being critical about the product you're selling. It's the art is repeating somebody's opinion back to themselves that they need to hear it. So the art of the sale is you're just essentially taking in the customer's this is retail sales, but you're taking in what the customer wants in a product, and you're repeating that back to them as if they are totally correct about that assumption about the product. I think it's not it's not. You could say, oh, well, there's a flaw in this, but that actually plays well to what you really wanted, isn't it? Because you didn't want something that was quite like that. So anyway.
The scarier thing of all of this is the number of people that watch reviews, read reviews, that their primary question is, tell me what I should buy.
Yeah.
That's the bit that scares me the most. And there is a huge number of them that seem incapable of making their own decisions and will buy something on the basis of what someone else says is either good or bad about a product. That's the bit that scares me the most. And the number of those people is absolutely insane.
Yeah, and that's why I left Urban Gentry. Yeah, Urban Gentry was. I mean, I look. What TGV did with that at the start was great, but there was a time when End was. I've got $1,000. What should I spend? I've got $5,000. What should I buy? And you're like, whoa, hang on. There's like a lot going on in that question.
You make a great point, Dave. Too. When I was younger, I had a job called visual merchandising, and basically what that means is I dressed mannequins for a living. And what was really funny to me is that I would go through the store and I would pick out an outfit and put this whole thing together. And I can't tell you how many times I heard people go to the retail person, I want everything that's there. Like once it had been put together on display, I was like, you guys, I just picked stuff off the shelf. You can do that too. There's lots of things here, but people, they need to be told what they want, and in large part.
Yep.
Yeah, we've got it at the moment. My wife and I can't decide. Or we want to paint every room in our house. We've only painted one. We cannot decide what color to paint it, and we need that kind of somebody to come in. I said we need an interior designer to tell us this because we just do not understand color and how things work together and so on. But
that's so my hot take of the day, wrapping that one up, is why the worst piece of advice anyone ever says on the internet is just buy what you like. Because Dave's so right. 99% of people have no idea what they like.
Yeah,
right. I actually found, and this is the great unwritten article, once my watch collection got to a certain size, I put it in a spreadsheet. So I figured out which columns mattered to me, and then I throw the watches in, and then you can start to see patterns. And what the most interesting thing was the watches I bought that didn't fit to the random patterns. That shows I did on occasion buy watches I should not like, and I love them. But what, it's something you can do once your collection gets to a certain size and you're as screwed up in the head as I am most of the time, is that you can use a spreadsheet to understand your taste and then find the exceptions that say, why did I buy this? What is it about this that breaks all these rules? And you get some interesting choices. But the first step is to understand what you like, because, and I'm fairly sure Peter said this in the video, if you don't understand what you like, how can you buy what you like? Everything else is just guesswork.
Yeah. Like me with the date. I bought that Tudor Black Boy 58 thinking I could get away with a watch without a date. And I couldn't do it.
And that's really interesting. And one of the really interesting things is a lot of people don't think you can think through the problem. They think that you can only learn what you like by buying and selling. And I suppose I disagree completely with that. I think you do not need, not going to say you're absolutely perfect. You will occasionally buy something you don't like and you'll move on. But I think if you look at the rest of your life and you critically analyze, I don't mean like negatively, but, drill into a little bit about who you are and what you like in anything, you can actually come up with a fairly decent idea of these are the kinds of things I'm going to like. The reason why that really doesn't work is because most people lie to themselves. Most people aren't happy to say out loud, I want to watch that lots of other people are going to like. They're terrified of that. That's a very uncool thing to say. And so what they do is they find 1,000,001 reasons of saying they want a Rolex without actually saying, I just want to watch that everyone knows is good.
It's an excellent point.
Fair point.
Yeah, that's been any last words on this? We've gone to our hour now. Any last words on it?
Yeah,
I don't think
only buy watches you like. Only buy watches you like.
That's
never listen to a YouTuber. Never buy what they recommend.
Yes.
Problem solved, Dave. Problem solved.
This is all opinion based on biases. But before we go, check out Jason at Watch Rolling's review of the opinion on the FXD. I'll leave a link in the description down below. And Patrick, you're like so close to 10,000. It's rude that you're not there yet.
I know.
So
I'm just like kicking the door at 10,000 subs.
Yeah, so if anybody's we need to get you there before. I don't think Tim Wright's quite at 10k, is he yet? So we need to get you there before.
So in the interest of balance, as neutral, you can also unsubscribe as well as subscribe. So if he's too near to 10,000, you can go down the way you wish. Just in the interest of balance.
Yeah,
that's true.
To like YouTubers. Yeah,
just get me to an even number.
Do you want an independent review of your content, Patrick? Because if you send me the check, I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, I actually say this to the salespeople that I work with. If they ask me a question, I'll say, follow your conscience. That's the answer.
Wow, they'll love you.
Well, yeah, because I get a little inkling of what they're about to ask and what the angle is. So I'll say,
on the basis that they're already professional salesmen. On the basis they're already professional sales people, I would say saying follow your conscience is a high risk strategy.
But Sam seems to be a poacher turned gamekeeper at this point.
Yes, yeah, that is totally the case. Yeah, I was definitely when I was in retail sales, I was selling Apple Macs and stuff like that. So yeah, that's a long time ago. Cool. Okay, so yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks for watching. Thank you for being so active in the comments section, and we'll see you next time on Casual Watch Talk Live. Thanks everyone.
Have a good one, everybody.